Okay, they can hear now. They can hear. Here we go. Here we go. Good afternoon, everybody. Let's see. Let's see who we got in the chat right now. Blue thumbnail. Seems some new faces. Blue thumbnail. Crusader the Snazzle. Philip D. Have a good one, buddy. Thank you for just stopping by and saying hi. Ellie on Mars. Thank you for coming over from Indestructoboy's channel. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
What's going on?
Hey, everybody.
All right. So this has been a long time coming. Every time Wizards decides to kick something up and change something, everybody wants to look at the monk and fix it. I've seen it in Terran's Discord and my Discord. They've been talking about this and how to go about fixing or changing the monk to make it up to par to the current standard of design for 5th edition. So thank you guys for coming. This is Dungeoneer's Pack Live. I'm Josh. Thank you guys for showing up. And yeah, today we're going to be talking about fixing the monk. Join me today, as you can see, fellow YouTuber and a designer in his own right, Terran, aka Indestructoboy, is here. And also,
hey everyone.
Also, I'm joined by another designer, Ross Leiser, here. That if you're in Terran's Discord, you'll see that obviously I'm in there, but Ross is in there too. So very, very familiar names and faces. Thank you guys for joining me today.
Hey, my pleasure. Looking forward to this chat.
Yeah, we've been trying to. I keep. It's funny how many times you and I have talked about like, yeah, we need to do a stream sometime.
Yeah.
It's like, well, school things happen or whatever, and I'm like, it's good to actually finally get a free Sunday to sit down with you, man.
Yeah, same. The stars finally aligned.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I have no YouTube, no Twitch, none of that. But I just like coming on to other people's channels and streams and just chatting.
Yeah, and awesome. And I honestly thank you for joining in. I was struggling to figure out because I didn't want just another, YouTuber in here too, because obviously there's different takes, but I like having a more of a designer perspective on this because not that YouTubers, including myself, are not well informed. It's just we have a very, very different point of view in terms of what the game's supposed to do. And
totally.
Yeah,
right.
For me, it's all about the feel good moments, even if things aren't necessarily balanced. Because obviously, the things you're going to remember, for me at least, is like the story of the game, what cool stuff your friends did. But
yeah, and I focus a lot on story in my own games as well, but I also look at balance in terms of gameplay experience because I want to make sure when I'm designing that I'm not overshadowing anyone else's character and I'm not being overshadowed by anyone else's character in the things that the class or the character that I'm playing is supposed to be good at. Because that can create really terrible experiences at the table.
Exactly.
So that's why balance is important to me.
Exactly. All right. So,
I mean, I was just gonna say, Ross is the guy that. So me being on here. We were talking about like, kind of my style that I do things over on my channel is I've kind of like built my thesis out in that like playstyles series that I did. And, that's kind of the way that I look at the game where I'm trying to evoke certain playstyles out of character options. And I just want to, point up to Ross is the guy that I tend to send stuff over to where I'm like, all right, break it for me. Ross is the guy that has like the good mind for like what makes for like sound character options, in my opinion. And he's definitely the guy that makes the like, I mean, well, you started out as my numbers crunch dude. And then that transferred over into like, we're trying to justify like why this thing should exist and if it doesn't just kind of step on everything else's toes, right? Like that. Mm-hmm. So Ross,
I've been professionally designing on the Dungeon Masters Guild for about 4.5 years now, and it's specializing in character options. So just because I've done that, I always have reference books open when I'm designing. It just gives me like I see a very big picture of the game, I feel. In terms of how character options are designed and how chassis or scaffolding can be constructed. And I just see things differently than I think a lot of other people do because I specialize particularly in character option design. And I've never written an adventure. I've barely ever done a stat block other than making one up for when I'm DMing. So I think it just helps me have that perspective.
You haven't written. You didn't do any monster stuff.
The only stat block I will ever have released is going to be in my upcoming Sculptor remaster. I have NPC stat blocks, sculptors in that book, but I have never previously released a stat block.
That's really
other than
funny.
companion stat blocks.
I guess I just haven't realized that. Yeah, I mean, well, it's I think of you, me, Benjamin, some of the guys like Walrock as or Kibbles as like we're kind of character option specialists. Then you got guys like Heavy Arms, who's a system mechanic. Heavy Arms is the guy that comes in and does like an overhaul of a system.
Mhm.
And yeah, so it's
I
cool to
mean,
have that many
his
people in the
armor's
community.
handbook
Yeah.
has certainly the sales to show for that.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, we're going to jump right into it. But before that, I wanted to go to the question of the week I asked at the beginning of the week specifically for this. Let me see if it pulls up. Okay, apparently it's not going to pull up. Let me check really quick. So the question of the week was, what do you guys think the problem is with the monk class? So I asked, and as soon as I can get it pulled up right now, I'll show you guys the results. I'm not really surprised by some of them, obviously. Oh, actually, I know where it's at. Here we go. We're gonna go into here. Fix that. Okay, so what I was surprised with, not surprised with actually, 48% said all of the above. So I said the monk class doesn't get enough key points. Another option was does not do enough damage. And let me fix that again. And then the other option, they just have generally bad subclasses. So no surprise. No surprise there. You guys can see the poll here now. That 48% said all of that. But then what I was more surprised with, that 9% at least of these votes, there's a total of 279 votes. 9% said no, the monk is perfect, which threw me out. I expected 0%, but
I'm betting that most of that 9% have played monk levels 1 through 5 and not far beyond that, because that's where the class shines.
Yep.
Like that's where the class is actively great.
First year play.
At least from mechanical design.
Yeah. So I'm just basically going to say agree on not enough key points is kind of misleading on that. I think that they need and we can get into this another time. But I think the key point regeneration is the issue, not enough key points. And that so many of the core things that you want monk to do and that other classes can do for free is tied behind a class resource.
Yeah.
Which I do not agree with being reasonable for, or really just, yeah, I don't think that that's really fair on the monk.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I agree with Taryn. I'm not sure the issue with the key points is actually that there aren't enough of them. I think the issue is that key point costs are too high for a lot of things. And that makes it feel like you don't have enough key points when, honestly, if you're getting like 5 of a resource per short rest, that should be good. Like, look at the way the Pugilist does it, that Benjamin Huffman designed.
Yeah.
I mean, that gets even fewer points maximum than the monk does per short rest, but it has really cool regeneration mechanics, and all the things that it uses its moxie points for are properly costed, so you never feel like you don't have enough.
Yeah. Well, and even so Matt Mercer's Gunslinger and then Heavy Arms Gunslinger both do the on a crit you regain a grit point, which is a carryover.
I'm pretty sure that's an iconic thing from like a previous edition, if I'm not mistaken.
I want to say it was Pathfinder. Yeah, because I think Matt's Gunslinger is a Pathfinder conversion.
Yeah, it was a Pathfinder conversion.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, given Critical Role's origins, yeah.
And then Heavy just kept that in it, and I'm like, man, Monk could use something like that, but I don't know that I would just want to slap it on a crit, because that feels narratively weak.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But yeah, anyways, that's my thought.
All right.
I mean, given monk narrative, if they're supposed to be kind of channeling this like Buddhist or Shaolin monk kind of aesthetic, which we can get into, I think that's actually one of the problems with the monk. It's a fish out of water with the rest of the class options. But if we want to channel that, it could even be like take your turn to recharge, like get up more energy, or even like if you do a really cool acrobatic thing. Like I'm not how that manifests mechanically, I don't know. But.
Ross, I swear to you that is what I have written in my overhaul. You can so essentially
I did kung fu. I practiced Shaolin kung fu for 6 years. Like
my thought,
it makes sense to me.
My thought is like you can take your action and stop moving, and essentially concentrate. And if you remain your concentration, or you keep your concentration up until the start of your next turn, you regain a certain amount of key points.
You know what's funny? I actually did that exact thing on my
Did you really?
Yojimbo class. Yeah. That's like
Okay.
that's the exact mechanic you just described is how the Yojimbo can recharge their balance points in the middle of a combat. Yeah.
Okay, so then to me, like, and your Yojimbo is one of the only classes of yours I'm not really familiar with. But like it feels good. The narrative of like quick meditation is there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely.
So, and I think at the cost of you sacrificing your action to enter into this meditative state, if you keep it up for this 6 seconds or whatever, I mean, if you want to say that needs to only be a certain amount of times for short or long rests, then whatever. But like, I mean, part of what I think could help out the monk is like, honestly, at 11th level, if you start out your turn with 0 key points, you regain 1 key point. Like, I mean,
yeah, I worry that could be too strong. Like you'd have to workshop that kind of mechanic, especially at that relative low of a level compared to other mechanics that do something similar.
sure.
But I could see something like that working. Getting back to the question at large, though, I think also the lack of damage that people perceive, which is especially true at later levels. They don't deal enough damage at later levels, at least for given the way they played levels 1 through 5. For people that are playing them at later levels, like that also stems from them not being able to do things that other classes get for free. Like,
Right.
look at
Yeah.
fighter versus monk. Like, you get 3 attacks with potentially a 2d6 weapon as a fighter at 11th level, whereas monk you're dealing 1d8 3 times with no key point expenditure. But then as you get higher and higher levels, once fighter gets their 4th attack, like to even remotely keep up with that as a monk, you need to expend key points.
Well,
So I understand that perception.
my counter to that is, are they supposed to?
By the way they're designed in the player's handbook, no, which is
That's-
something we need to discuss.
Yeah, that's my thought. Is like, I don't know that the monk is supposed to be the same kind of damage output as rogue, you know, because otherwise it would just be like the monk is a rogue with a new coat of paint, right?
Yeah.
Which I don't think is interesting. And
No.
I think everyone, basically, if they're watching this stream and they're familiar with me, knows like Treant Monk's Monk Suck, you know, video, where I think Treant Monk says that he was confused about some of the you know, propositions people were making about like, well, Monk is supposed to be a striker, Monk is supposed to be a controller, Monk is supposed to be XYZ thing, and I'm like,
Monk doesn't know what it wants to do.
yeah, Monk just honestly is in a it like you were saying, I think in our chat, it evolves, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, I think we'll get into that with
Yeah.
like the misconceptions with Monk
Yeah.
when we get into that section.
Yeah, actually.
But like level's a transition point. That's when it starts changing.
All right, so before we just jump right into that, I just want to let everyone know, if you guys have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat. I'll read them out as I can keep up with them. But yeah, let's jump into perfect segue. What does everybody get wrong with the monk? The general consensus. Obviously, there's a design perspective, the narrative perspective, but the general D&D community, at least on the internet, what do they get wrong, in your guys' opinion?
stop ending your turn right in front of something. Like, your job is to pop in, hit the thing. Stop ending your turn in the front line. Like, this is like, people are like, well, my monk died so quick, and I was like, well, were you in melee combat with it? Like, did you end your turn 5 feet away from the thing? There's your problem. Monk is supposed to be the class that gets in there, it's what I call the harasser play style. They pop in, do damage, and really at level 5, it's, I do the attack that does stunning strike. And then your branch needs to be, does stunning strike work? If yes, flurry of blows. If no, step of the wind in GTFO. That's like,
I mean, if you get your stunning strike off, you don't even need to step of the wind. Is the nice part, because you don't need to disengage. The thing can't attack you.
Yeah.
So for me, I think people get 2 things wrong about Monk, other than what Taryn has already said, which I agree with. It's a striker at early levels. At early levels, a D8 hit die is generally good enough to stay in the front line and just bash, because they deal a lot of damage at early levels. But once you hit that 5th level point, like the weird thing about the monk class chassis is that it begins to transition from a striker in those early levels, like
Yeah.
into a controller slash harasser. Like
Yeah.
it's not meant to deal damage anymore beyond 5th level, and we can see that in how hard the damage falls off. Like once you get to like level 11 compared to other
Yeah.
classes. Um, and the other thing that I see people get wrong, which is actually going to sound counter to what Terran says at first, but then I'll explain myself, is that Monk is a shockingly tanky class if it is played properly. Like it because there is no opportunity cost for them to increase their AC. You are investing in Dex or you're investing in Wiz. One is your damage and your AC and your ability to Dex save. The other is your key modifier and also wisdom saving throws. Both are incredibly valuable saving throws that you're. And so, like, so early levels, it's not going to be great. You're going to have an AC of like 15, 16 maximum, which is going to be the same as your frontliner, which is going to have a higher hit die in general. But then at 2nd level, you get dodge as a bonus action if you want it. You get disengage to get out of there as a bonus action if you want it. Deflect missiles as a reaction and just be like, I'm going to reduce the damage I'll take from this ranged attack once per round. Then you get to stunning strike, which is I'm just going to make you not be able to hit me. Stillness of mind makes you immune to poison damage.
Right.
Sorry, no, purity of body does that. Stillness of mind makes it so, I'm charmed or frightened. No, I'm not. Diamond Soul gives you proficiency in all saving throws, all of them, and lets you expend a key point to re-roll a failed saving throw. They are so good at making things not stick to them if they are played in a way that isn't like, I'm just going to stand right in front of this enemy and get hit.
Yeah. Like the argument I keep getting heard about that, like the counter, well, at least pretty early on, was that once DMs kind of get used to, hey, the monk's just going to throw arrows back at me, they're going to stop shooting arrows at the monk.
And that's just bad DMing. Honestly.
And it is. And that's very fair. Really, as a DM, whenever you realize that monk got, deflect missiles, you should be like, let me just shoot at least 1 or 2 arrows the monk's way to make them feel like a badass here, right?
So what you do in that scenario is you don't remove all archers from your campaign. You add an extra archer or 2 every single combat. They can still use their feature, but the challenge is still there.
Yep. It's the same fix I suggest for like class features that rely so heavily on frightened and charmed. It's like, cool, now your boss should get minions that can be frightened and charmed. And, like make it to where those features are still going to pay off, even if you do something like the enemy, the boss is immune to being charmed, but their minions aren't. That still makes the feature feel really cool. Like,
yeah, it makes your player feel good to be able to use their abilities.
Yeah,
like there is not mutual exclusivity between letting your players feel good and also still providing a challenge. Like those two things can and should coexist in a campaign.
But real quick. So the question was essentially, what do people get wrong about?
What do people get wrong? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, the tankiness of it, it's all kind of it's an interesting sort of aggressive tank in a way. I mean, I like the idea of the deflect missiles. Doing that, like, you get a defensive feature that can also be used offensively, which is like, it feels very Spike from Cowboy Bebop, like you're gonna turn their attack against them, kind of.
Yes.
Tai Chi shit. But and I think that works. But it's also like, I feel like the monk should also get something that works for melee attacks. That feels like that. Like deflect missiles could also work for that. Like, I'm going to redirect your attack against you. Like,
I did
Master.
write that. Yeah, Drunken Master does something like that, and I also wrote a mechanic very similar to deflect missiles, but for melee attacks into the Way of the Peaceful Warrior Monk and the Complete Devout Handbook.
Yeah.
Because I agree, they should absolutely get something in melee.
Yeah. That's. Anyways,
Sorry, Josh, we've been totally
talking.
It's
all good. I'm enjoying it. On my perspective of like what I think the general D&D community kind of gets wrong with it. I think you guys hit on both of it. They don't really necessarily know what role the monk is supposed to fill. I call my harassers strikers. So just so people that have been watching the chat, so they understand, Striker and Harasser for me are the same thing, but the way you guys use Striker is as just a melee combatant.
Well, not necessarily melee, but it's just something that's dedicated to attack-based damage.
Oh, okay.
Well,
yeah.
I go a little bit further than that. Whenever I define it in my playstyle series, I say that the Striker is focused on single target damage.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
The
I
Harasser,
call blasters things that deal AoE damage.
Yeah, the blaster is the big multiple target thing, but the Harasser playstyle to me is somebody that wants to stay in the midline and has a disengagement tool to get into the front line to deal their damage and pop out of that front line without risking opportunity attacks.
Yeah. So you can have a Harasser that is also a Striker, and in some cases, Monk is that at early levels.
Yeah, and that's pretty much how I define the Monk. So just some clarity is like, they are the one that they go and harass, and then they pop out of the fight.
Yeah, we all have our own terminology, don't we?
Yeah.
Every single person that talks about D&D uses every word slightly differently.
Yeah. Different, but as soon as I heard what you guys said, I'm like, okay, I know what they're talking about. Like immediately, like we all know what the wording.
Well, and I think if you ever see, where's it at? Yes. Hang on, I'm gonna show this book to anybody that wants or is interested without knocking stuff off my bookshelf. Live to Tell the Tale by Keith Amon. Keith Amon does a big breakdown on what is essentially, what I call, or I guess we could consider the meta of D&D. What it means to play a character with certain options. He calls the Harasser a skirmisher over there, which I can agree with that terminology as well.
That makes sense.
But yeah, that's kind of what got my gears turning about like, okay, how do we analyze this game in terms of like dedicating, my perspective on the playstyle is you have a zone, a dynamic, and a role. Your role is what you do in combat, your dynamic is out of combat, and your zone is where you need to be in combat. That's at least how I understand the game, and I've got that over on my channel if anyone's interested. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is narratively, I don't think people are very disconnected with the Monk. It's even inherent into how WotCIC approaches the Monk. It's very and I know the Asian Represents podcast, they talked numerous times about how to like actually fix the narrative of the Monk, and I recommend anybody go check that out. As a person, I did martial arts from when I was like 4 till I was 15. So for me, it's like the Monk has like a nice little soft spot for me. It's like this helps me kind of relive my early childhood of being able to do karate, but in D&D. So, but there is a big narrative disconnect. It seems like the Monk is stuck in this Western worldview of like martial arts in the 70s on top of like a splash of 90s and early 2000s
martial
anime.
arts mysticism. Mysticism and like it conflates martial arts mysticism and anime all into one, and it kind of feels like a caricature. Instead of like actual respectful representation.
Yeah.
Well, and as somebody that I teach at a Catholic school, so we have monks that like live in the monastery that they're at school. I'm like, I don't see any of these dudes here using ki to anyways.
And I've seen that argument too. That's why I said the fish out of water thing earlier. D&D is predominantly like Western civilization fantasy, and then you have Eastern fantasy that's not even like a proper representation of Eastern fantasy, just slapped in there. Like Western fantasy Monk is an entirely different thing.
Yeah, and then on top of that, you have the other camp of people that just want the Monk to be devoid of the some of that religious perspective, and they just want it to be the person that just beats stuff up with their hands and their fists, their fists and their feet. They're just a straight up brawler, and that's why I think the Pugilist is like perfect for that, because you step away from that.
I mean, there's a reason that thing is an adamantine bestseller.
I think he's officially adamantine.
You're gonna hear that a lot from the three of us. Is like, if you guys want to just play a brawler, a bare knuckle brawler,
the Pugilist,
go check it out.
Pugilist. Great class.
For full disclosure here, Ross and I are friends with Benjamin, and we've worked together in the past.
I'm working on a project with Benjamin right now. Full disclosure.
But I will say there was something in chat that came up that I wanted to kind of point out, because it. Where was it? It was something that. Yes. I think Bamstack said, my counter to these positives to the Monk is that in order to bonus action dodge disengage, you've got to give up damage with flurry of blows. And the thing with this is like I completely 100% agree with you, and that's the core issue I have with this class. And I specifically look at this as I think that the monk just is starved whenever you look at it in comparison to rogue. The rogue is also the other midline striker slash harasser, but the rogue just gets everything that the monk gets to do essentially for free outside of flurry of blows and stunning strike at 5th level. But the rogue also has an amazing dynamic fleshed out for it, and the fact that it's the best Dungeoneer in the game, on par with the Artificer.
Yeah.
Where I think Monk and Rogue really diverge is at 5th level.
Yeah.
Like that's when Monk actually carves out this unique space for itself. Mechanically, amongst the other core classes. But it's weird that they didn't start there. And they just made it feel like, even though it's dealing great damage and good multiple target damage, which Rogue struggles with,
Right.
that it doesn't feel unique from Rogue until level 5.
Well, and the fact that there's not really any care taken for the roleplay aspect of Monk outside of the flavor text that comes before the class. There's like nothing within the base class to evoke the feeling of what the monk is supposed to be. And some people might like the blank slate. I don't think that monk is essentially the blank slate brawler kind of a class to go with. I think that monks, especially with that flavor text, have a pretty hard set defined roleplay precedent, I guess you could say. So the fact that monk, I mean, rogue gets expertise. They get so many things to flesh out what they're supposed to be outside of combat, and monk gets
nothing.
Nothing. You know,
the only thing Monk gets that is actually useful outside of combat is the ability to jump twice as far with Step of the Wind, slow fall, and then the ability to run up walls. That's all they get. Like that's all they get to be useful outside of combat. Everything. Well, they can turn invisible for a minute at 18th level.
Yeah. There's just nothing evoking what they're supposed to do in the interaction and exploration pillars of play outside of you're the guy that jumps on stuff. And that is meh. You know.
It's the same problem Barbarian had, but they actually took some steps to fix some of that in Tasha's.
Yeah, and this is a perfect segue because we're already touching on this. What exactly, now that we kind of know, well, generally people just don't necessarily know the role of what the monk is supposed to do, and it's inherent because of the way that this class is generally just designed. It wants us to do one thing in the beginning of the game, and then towards the mid to late game, it wants us to play something completely different. What exactly, what can we do now, like or what are you guys thinking your guys' fixes for the monk, or what do you want to see WotC do, especially with that big update in 2024?
Combat meditation. Get the, I mean, you sacrifice an entire turn and you can regain, let's say, a number of key points equal to your wisdom modifier. Like, that's big. You're giving up an entire turn to do this, and you have to maintain your concentration. That is, I love that idea of, you know, you have to maintain this focus to get this back. It's really, for me, I think once you give monk a more reasonable means of key regeneration, then they're pretty okay. But there's still very little lack of care given to what they do outside of combat.
Yeah. And just circling back to that for a second, I just saw in chat, George says that they also speak all languages, which is true at level 13.
Yeah.
Which more than 90% of all campaigns never get to.
Yeah.
Like all the data tracking suggests that like a good 92% at least of games stop at level 10. Stop by level 10.
Yeah.
So we almost can't consider those features when it comes to playstyle. In some ways,
and even then, that's way too late. Like you got a party bard, you got anybody that's a party face. Well, they're just gonna have other tools that they could just do that at the beginning of the game.
And we're also seeing now, like with the College of Eloquence bard at 6th level, they get an ability to to be understood no matter what language they're speaking.
Right. And to be fair, with that, what is it? It's like Tongue of Sun and Moon or something like that, right?
Yeah, that's what. Tongue of Sun and Moon. That's what it's called. Yeah.
By that time, there were characters that were already getting telepathy, that were already getting tongues, speak with animals. Like,
I mean, we're seeing races now that can ignore language barriers.
Yeah.
On their telepathy.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, come on. You really think Thri-Kreen is going to get printed like that?
Oh God, I hope not.
That's going to be.
I mean, they printed UNT Pureblood the way they printed it. So who knows these days?
Oh man,
they printed Warforged the way they printed that.
And even then, looking at what he said about they speak all languages, the monk isn't built in a way to actually take advantage of that. They're not built to be a party face. A Senate Dragon attempts to give them some tools for that by giving them the advantage on giving them sort of advantage. But even then, you're not built to have charisma. Yeah, you're not built for charisma at all. You're a wisdom based you're a wisdom based dex based class, so you can't take advantage of that cool thing.
Yeah, what I would like to see, in addition to them actually getting more things to do outside of combat, is I want to see a more unified approach to their playstyle. Because people, like a lot of people when they're making characters, like most campaigns start at level 3. And so people are considering like the way their first 3 levels are playing to like inform them how the class will always play. And Monk doesn't do that in their first 3 levels. It's a complete and total incorrect picture of how it plays at later levels. And so I would love to see some of that kind of controlling or debuffing brought in at early levels. And I'm not even sure that you'd be able to keep it a monk class if it stays that way. Like it might need a full narrative overhaul to justify that. But it's like the only class in the game that doesn't have a consistent play style throughout all of its progression.
If you're still fleshing out a thing's identity by 4th level, you done fucked up somewhere. Yeah, like one of my it's funny. It's like one of my favorite sayings. I think it's by like Miles Davis. He's talking about he was up on the bandstand with somebody. I can't remember who it was, but they're just up there soloing for so long and they can't figure out how to end their solo. And Miles just looks at the guy and he goes, "Okay, we'll take the horn out of your face." Like if what you're saying can't be said within like 2 to 3 levels for like the identity of a thing, then maybe the identity is like what you've got down needs to get scrapped. If you're so hung up on like, I think that these core features are pretty good, and this is just like, something that Heavy kind of reinforced with me whenever I was working on the Dancer was like, you need to figure out that core by 3rd level. You need to figure out what that thing's entire play is supposed to be by 3rd level. Yeah. If you go on any longer than that, then what you're saying is going to be a confusing mess. And this is just, I think Monk is the only one that I can really say it kind of rings true with currently. I'm trying to think of another class that I might kind of give that classification to, right? Where it's like, it just doesn't feel like, I know what this thing is supposed to do by 5th level.
Yeah, I can
or even 3rd level.
I can go through every class and I kind of just know, except the monk, what its role is supposed to be.
I mean, what's bizarre is if you take a look at just the first 5 levels at monk, you will be convinced that this thing is supposed to be a striker and a damage dealer forever.
Right.
And then you look beyond that and it's not.
Yeah.
Wolfsbane
I don't feel like there's anything else that quote unquote lies to you that way.
Over in the chat real quick, Wolfsbane said, could we look into maybe take some ideas from the Mystic class and rework them into the Monk? So what I think is kind of cool, just because I saw that this last week, I don't know if it was Laser Llama or somebody on the Unearthed Arcana subreddit posted up a Mystic revamp that used Key. And I saw that and I was like, oh, we have an interesting concept here. An intelligence-based character that was using Key. And I was like, okay, I can see a bit of the narrative through line for what this energy is supposed to be now, right?
But narratively, I think that's where the monk struggles. Like the narrative of the monk is there's a part of it that's like a pseudo spellcaster.
Right.
And there's a part of it that's a fighter subclass. And one of the proposed fixes I saw earlier in the chat is to give like options, like a list of things that you can like train yourself in, how is that different than Battlemaster, or like how Fighter was designed in the D&D Next playtest packet before they changed it, where Battlemaster's maneuvers and superiority dice were a core part of the Fighter class.
Yeah.
Like it honestly, Monk feels in some ways like a Fighter subclass that was poorly attempted to be worked into a full class with its own subclasses. And like that's just how I feel about it in a lot of ways.
Actually, real quick, I don't know if he's in the chat or not. Hey, Ukulele, if you're in the chat, would you be able to tell us how late into the alpha development the Monk was? I'm just gonna see if you're out there. If not, whatever. Uke is like the playtest sage over in the Discord server, and
he's been just bringing up stuff that I didn't even know existed. Like I wasn't around playing this game when the playtest was out. I jumped in around Elemental Evil, so seeing like the stuff that didn't make it, I'm kind of just like, why didn't having the fighter having a base of alone of having the maneuvers would have been sweet.
I would have loved that.
Yeah,
I got into D&D very late in 4E's lifestyle. I played one 4E campaign, and then literally the next summer, the official version of 5E dropped. I didn't even know a playtest was happening for 5E before 5E dropped. And I love 5E. I adore it as a person that's only played 4E before it and only in one campaign with one character. But it does have its issues. And when I heard about the D&D Next playtest and about how the superiority dice was scrapped from base fighter class into a subclass, I got sad. Because don't get me wrong, I love the fighter. It is the most blank slate, beautiful, build your character any way you want kind of class in the entire game. But it's heartbreaking that maneuvers and superiority dice were not in the base fighter class for me.
Yeah.
And to go back on what you're saying about the Monk potentially just being a weak fighter subclass, we're even seeing it now with Tasha's. They brought in the unarmed fighting style, and then they even have a suggestion to play a brawler. A hand-to-hand brawler is just to mix.
They literally call it a pugilist.
Yeah. A Battlemaster.
They literally call it a pugilist.
Yeah. Let's not open that can of worms.
Yeah. But even then, in their own book, they kind of be like, well, if you just want to play something that actually has a narrative through line that actually can do what it's meant to do, here's another option that's in another class, not in our base class that's supposed to encompass the unarmed combat character, you know.
Well, and for all intents and purposes, because like most D&D campaigns don't make it up past like 11th level or whatever, you're objectively better by taking that fighting style and multi-classing over into Monk, just because your damage die is higher and you get extra options that you can do on an unarmed strike, and then you get all the Monk shit on top of that, but your unarmed strike die is just bigger because you went fighter for 2 levels.
Yeah, let's not get me started on multi-classing.
I mean, you know, I'm just wondering if there's not a precedent to be set. And I mean, I also don't think that Monk necessarily needs. I don't think that more damage is the way to fix Monk. But I do think that it's worth mentioning that the fighter gets a D6 unarmed strike die, and the Monk starts out at a D4.
Yeah.
And Monk is the unarmed strike class, so it's like, what?
I have seen people complain about Pugilist, because Pugilist starts at a D6 die too, but also keep in mind, Pugilist's AC is nowhere near Monk's.
Yeah.
Nowhere near it. It is not nearly as survivable as Monk is when it is played. It just deals more damage as a kind of recompense.
Well, and, you know, also the Pugilist, I mean, well, never mind. I don't want to. No, never mind. That's not my information to share. No, we're good.
Don't be talking about insider things.
No, I don't. No, I don't.
Because I know exactly what he was probably about to say.
Nope. I'm not saying anything. Nope.
It'll get clipped really, really quick.
No. That's anyway, so yes, I don't think that. I know that a lot of people were saying that like damage is their big hang up with like the Pugilist. I just have to disagree with that point. the Pugilist has so much offered in its kit in terms of what it can do as a debuffer or controller, that I think that if the Pugilist got any more damage, like, man, like, as somebody that's, I say, I'm a support main. I'm always going to roll up clerics or, druid, whatever. I'm such a high support guy.
I
that,
love support characters too.
Yeah, I love the support playstyle. And I look at Monk and I'm like, you all don't really know kind of how scary the tools that it gets are. Except,
Stunning Strike, we've had this conversation before, Terran, is one of the single most powerful features in the entire game.
Right.
Do you guys feel that Stunning Strike being so powerful limits its design space?
Yes. Absolutely. Undoubtedly. 100%.
Yep.
Because for me, one of the big glaring problems I see is that since Stunning Strike is so good, it hinders its subclasses, so that we can't have anything. If we do have anything that's up to par with Stunning Strike, it's overcosted in key, and or if we have anything that's supposed to keep up or alternate use of our key points, it's too weak because Stunning Strike is there. Yeah.
It warps everything around itself in the class. Like, it becomes, why would I use my key points for anything else when literally the best thing I can do with my key points is Stunning Strike?
Right. And, there's a thing I've talked about a few times on the channel. It's the philosophical idea that we have a power budget whenever we're designing. And that's that there is something of a number that you can assign to the power of a feature to basically judge whether or not I've spent my power budget in designing this thing to make it reasonable as a class. The thing with Monk is, like, most of its features are like what I would give maybe a 2 or a 3-2, and then I look at Stunning Strike and that's a sudden 16. Like, that is like such a scary good feature that you'll also notice that nothing else about Monk synergizes with Stunning Strike. They knew that, like, nothing else can build off of how strong Stunning Strike
Flurry
is.
of Blows.
Yeah.
Flurry of Blows, just to keep trying to Stunning Strike. Because it literally just becomes, especially in boss encounters, especially things with legendary resistances, I'm going to use 4 attacks to try to Stunning Strike this thing. If it succeeds 3 times with legendary actions, I'm getting it on the 4th. Like, and then we all just gang up and kill it. Like, that's what it becomes with monks.
To add here, the subclasses that I actually look at and I think, wow, wait, we actually do have something that builds off a Stunning Strike are Sun Soul, because Burning Hands uses a dex save, and then Ascendant Dragon, because the Dragon's Breath is a dex save. But we still look at both of those, and we look at them combined or compared to other subclasses, and we think they still feel undertuned.
I mean, I will say this: I initially judged Ascendant Dragon extremely harshly, and I do think it is still way too much like kitchen sink style design. Just like it just gets too much. There's too many ideas. It's not focused enough. But the Breath of the Dragon feature is actually a lot better than I initially gave it credit for, because before you ever have to use key points on it, you get proficiency bonus uses per long rest, and it replaces an attack. It's not a full action, so it's better than I initially gave it credit for, and especially with the synergy with Stunning Strike, that makes it a lot better. Because they just auto fail the dex save when they're stunned. But like, it's still, once you run out of those 2 up to 6 uses, well, at least I guess 3 uses at Stunning Strike level, is why would I ever spend the 2 key points on that ever again? I mean, it's basically just saying I have 3 uses of it per day, because I'm not spending those 2 key points when I could use those on Stunning Strike.
But having the option to do so feels better.
Yeah.
It just having the availability that if I should want to do this again, even if you never do, it feels good.
Yeah. No, options are always a good thing. Flexibility is always a good thing. It's just there's very few circumstances in which you wouldn't want to use Stunning Strike.
Yeah.
We got some questions in the chat right here. I'm reading it. Wolfsbane said, maybe at 3rd level, the monk could add their wisdom modifier to all intelligence skill checks and saving throws. Would that go into the monk's wise master motif?
It is, sure. It's boring, but sure.
Yeah. I mean, I do love In Fey Wanderer Ranger, I love
Yeah.
the Rangers and Tasha's to death. I love what they did to Ranger and Tasha's. I think Ranger came away the big winner of
Yeah.
that book.
Yeah.
And I do love the supernatural glamour. It's something like that.
Yeah.
Of like you can add your wisdom modifier to your charisma checks.
Yeah.
That feels so cool, but it would get cheapened if something else got something similar.
But, and it's also getting it's getting that same problem. What was that other mechanic that we were talking about? That like, bonus action help out to a range of 30 feet, where we were like, they came out with it in Xanthar's Guide on the Mastermind, and suddenly everyone's like, this is our new piece. This is our new toy to design with. Let's throw it on everything.
Yep.
And now that
I actually like it in certain feats.
Yeah.
But I don't think it should be given to like tons of character options.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to see rehashes of the same mechanic over and over and over again. That's boring. It makes things feel cheap. Like I love design niches. I do.
And it's supposed to have a specific purpose. Like the thing that I did with it on the dancer, whenever I saw the mechanic and I was like, cool, let's do that, is that if you're dancing as a part of making a performance check, you add your dex mod to it, which I was like, oh yeah, because you're moving that grace, whatever. And so then it's like, not only could you get expertise in it, but you can also add your dex on top. Whoa. Yeah. So yeah, now you're really going to want to dance as a performance check, right? I think if any class to get something like that, it should be the dancer, right?
Yeah.
And it's only on one check. It's not like, charisma checks. But anyways, so.
And that comment also brings up the idea of, do we want to move forward with Monk as a mystic? Or do we want to make the Monk more of the martial artist archetype? Because they're not the same thing.
Yeah, and you get some weird.
When you combine them, you get a really weird kind of mix of cultures that don't actually exist together most of the time.
Or you start playing into some problematic tropes, a Western view of
exactly.
Asian culture. Then you get into that Asian mysticism that you can see like and most currently like Shang-Chi, the movie. They rip that away from that character on purpose. If you dig into the comics, they
fantastic movie just came out this weekend for streaming on Disney Plus, so highly recommend.
If you want some monk inspiration, go watch Shang-Chi. It's really, really good. Second question: if someone does acknowledge the problems of monk but still wants to play it, is that okay? Yes. Yes.
If your DM allows it, like if it's on your DM's list of allowed things. Or have a conversation with your DM. If you have a character concept you feel can only work with the monk, talk to your DM. Yeah. Honestly, I don't think there's anything wrong with like having a conversation with your DM about what character you want to build or how you want to play. I think that's actually healthy to have those conversations with your DM. So there's nothing wrong.
I've become kind of notorious on YouTube for saying that I banned the monk. And I have so many people that give me like hate comments whenever I bring that up. And they're like, I'd never play at your table. And I'm like, that's fine. I don't know who the hell you are. But so like the reason why I banned the monk, and I've said this, is that it injects that sort of mysticism that just isn't really in my view for my specific world building. But the pugilist totally does. And
it depends on the story you want your setting to tell.
Yeah.
Like as a DM, I highly encourage people to limit the options of characters so that everything is focused to the feel of the world or the feel of the setting that you're doing, because restrictions breed creativity. And I fully believe that from the bottom of my heart.
And I also allow for 24 classes at my table, so I think I should probably start. But I mean, I'm just saying that like, the restrictions, like thinking about, okay, well, the only ability that it's what made me realize the divination wizard is actually like a time wizard, because you can replace that portent die as like you can find an alternate timeline. Like,
you can reflavor anything to almost anything. Yeah. And I love reflavoring when I can.
Yeah.
We got 2 questions regarding Stunning Strike, and after that, we're going to jump into, because we're a little low on time, of quick fixes for people to take with the monk if they want to play it, but want to solve some of these issues. So 2 questions on Stunning Strike. Rich said, if you take Stunning Strike out of the monk's toolkit, how would you balance the rest of the class?
Yeah, D6 unarmed strike die.
Honestly, if you take Stunning Strike out of their kit, you can give literally every other key point cost better economy. Like if you take like Wave of 4 Elements suddenly looks a lot more interesting if Stunning Strike doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Especially with a key fueled attack from Tasha's. But
Yeah.
like if Stunning Strike doesn't exist, you can increase the damage. You can at later levels, like say 11th level, say like a certain number of times per day, you no longer need to spend a key point for your flurry of blows. Or even like a later level feature, like a 17th level feature could be, you don't have to spend a key point for flurry of blows anymore. Because like it makes key points more individually valuable.
Yeah.
Because they aren't all being filtered into one thing.
Well, and I mean, if we get that low, like, I honestly think an ideal monk would not have key points. An ideal monk would completely remove the idea of tracking. Because
So
tracking,
how is that not a fighter?
Well, and right. I mean, I see you there. I definitely feel you there. So I think in an ideal world, if we start reducing the costs of what's funny is you get rid of Stunning Strike and you go with Ross's argument there. It starts to look like you can get rid of the key costs of all your martial arts features. Flurry of Blows. Well, Flurry of Blows is definitely
Flurry of Blows
needs a key point. That needs a key point.
But I
I
do agree. You could. I mean, Cunning Action already does almost everything Patient Defense and Step of the Wind do.
Yeah.
For no cost.
Like it seems like, good lord, it seems like Stunning Strike is the reason why Monk doesn't get free stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like really,
because you need to have an opportunity cost because Stunning Strike exists.
Even just make Stunning Strike, make it to where like the creature doesn't get reactions, or like maybe its movement speed is reduced or something like that. What that does is like that
honestly
gives you a disengagement tool right there.
Yeah. Honestly, a feature like we've seen on Swashbuckler Rogue. Like if you hit something, it can't hit you with an opportunity attack.
Yeah.
That would be so good for a monk playstyle.
Yeah.
Like get in, punch, get out. Like that would be so good.
Every monk at my table that's played outside of myself has taken the mobile feat specifically for that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Mobile feat is so good.
Yeah.
Especially on a rogue. Like it's so good on rogues, but it's also very, very good on monks.
Well, and just to this will be my last point on this part. It seems like all the things that we're like, this would make the monk great, are all in Drunken Master.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, really, it's my favorite monk subclass for a reason. Like, that is, to me, the ultimate realization of what a monk should feel like. I love that subclass.
Unpopular opinion, and this is just me because I play very out-of-combat-oriented campaigns. My favorite monk is Way of Shadow.
I cannot stand that subclass. I like, it was my first subclass I ever played in 5e. And I mean, the feel of it just left a bad taste in my mouth because I was like,
just dropped.
Uh-oh.
Give me a sec. Ross.
We're gonna be split over here. Oh no!
Hold on. We'll fix it right now. Here we go.
Uh-oh. Wait, I think I'm in Ross's spot now.
Yeah, you're in Ross's spot now. So give me a sec.
Oh, yeah, my entire Discord just forced quit.
Okay. we'll fix this. Okay, here we go.
Hey.
Here we go.
Hi,
little tech difficulties.
I'm back. Discord hates me.
Yeah. The last thing I think I wanted to say, like in terms of if you were to take away Stunning Strike, this was an idea that came up in my Discord, was not necessarily remove Stunning Strike, but obviously don't make it do the full stunning. What's it called? Incapacity.
Stunning is such a ridiculously powerful condition. Like there's few things more powerful than it.
But to give
paralyzed, definitely. But,
to give the monk a little bit more role clarity, what it's supposed to do. Me and another person in our Discord were suggesting maybe this is also part of what they can do to help some of the subclasses. Was obviously it would turn the monk into the role of a skirmisher that could be more of a support status effect sort of warrior. So
I would love to see that. There's
Yeah.
that niche does not exist in
Right.
5th edition currently.
So obviously, the weakest one would be like a poison condition, for example. Obviously, it would never happen. But something like
it would work at early levels.
Yeah, work early
Well,
levels.
And then never again.
They did it. They did it. It's Way of Mercy.
Oh, see, yeah.
Oh, true.
They did it.
I mean, I suppose we
Yeah.
have to hit that thing on the head because that's one of the most broken
Yeah.
healers in the entire game now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but changing Stunning Strike so that it's an option that gives you, based off your subclass, determines what kind of status effect you can do, which would change the playstyle.
Did you see the same Wolfsbane comment that I just saw?
Proficiency mod and key losing key. Oh, well, I was just gonna say, like, to me, and to me, what makes the most sense for Monk, and I think that this would kind of play into what would make what would make a more reasonable Monk is I like the idea of a Monk that builds off of fighting combos, in where as you successfully hit a creature multiple times, you can inflict other effects.
Oh.
Yep.
And that feels like very
kind
fighting
of what Way
game.
of the Open Hand does.
Yeah, no, exactly. You know, like, yeah, I anyways, in an ideal world, yeah.
I just saw Vigilant Games kind of getting back to the Stunning Strike thing.
Bring that up
I was talking about it requiring both an attack to hit and a failed con save. So how is it good? It's good because you don't have to burn the key point until you already hit with the attack, and you can use it as many times as you need to, as long as you still have attacks. So, like, if you hit burn a key point and it succeeds, you have another attack that you can then hit, potentially burn a key point, and then you have a bonus action or even flurry of blows to get 2 more chances if you really need it. And oftentimes you only need that to go off 1 time for a boss to die.
Yeah.
Especially if you have a paladin.
This was one of in Treant Monk's video, this was one of his big complaints. And it shows, and not, I mean, I'm not crafting on the Optimancer community here, but what I am saying is it shows the difference between an Optimancer's view of the feature and a designer's view of the feature. Because designers are going to look at a key or a Stunning Strike and its implications and think, what does this actually mean in the action economy? Whereas Treant Monk is going to see it as, I already hit the thing, and then I have 2 checks that are required in order for this thing to go off, in which case this is going to be worse than this just working because I already passed the 1 check. It's tricky because stunning is just such a good thing, and action economy denial is so powerful in D&D 5e that
not to mention just advantage for every single thing that attacks it, in addition to removing all of the creature's action economy. And also automatic failures on dex saves, and doesn't it automatically fail strength saves too? I'm just thinking about this off the top of my head.
Yeah, pull it up for everybody in the chat right now too. Yeah, just stun. Just the stun condition is just really, really good and worth the points.
And there's nothing Monk gets that can compete with potentially stunning something for 1 key point, and that's the issue with Stunning Strike from a designer's perspective.
Anybody that's played a MOBA or Dark Souls like in co-op is gonna PvP
knows how good
knows
CC is.
It's yeah.
All right, I know we're a little pressed for time. I know, Ross, you got a D&D game to play. So
actually, that got canceled, so I can stay a little bit late.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then I want to hit up one last question. Then it was the last question is, obviously now we kind of really know what kind of the monk's problems are. Not really having a good defined role, at least, or throughout its play lifestyle or play period, right?
The monk career.
Yeah, monk career. Yeah, exactly. What, in your guys' opinion, could somebody do as a DM or a player that wants to bring it to the DM to kind of give a quick fix to the monk? Or is that even possible?
That's a very difficult question to answer. Because, I mean, it depends what level you want to play at, really.
Yeah.
Because if you want to play if you're doing a one shot that's at anywhere from 1st to 4th level, there's nothing you need to do. The monk has one job and it's very good at it in those levels.
Yeah.
But if you are anywhere beyond tiers 2, 3, and 4, like the monk plays entirely differently in each tier. Stunning strike is involved, and you have to be like available for that. And it honestly, building a character for a 6th level monk you should be building it almost entirely differently and have a different expectation from if you're building a 3rd level monk, because a stunning strike warps the playstyle so immensely. So there's not really any one quick fix, I don't think, but that's my perspective.
And this is kind of building off of why I don't feel like there's a real big quick fix, and that's that I don't see a through line with the scaffolding of the subclasses. And this is something that, you know, Ross and I were just talking about today, where I think that at best what we could, at least what I'll say, what I'll concede on is, at best we can say it's finicky, and that we haven't been able to totally establish a through line with all the different subclasses. It's mostly in some situations they get a defensive feature at 6th and 11th, except in this case, and you know, like, it's not like cleric or paladin where you know what you're going to be getting, auras or reactions or.
And I think that's good design. Like when a person who's trying to design a subclass can look at a subclass scaffold and be like, okay, this is roughly what should be at every single slot. I think that's good design.
And I think that in order to build a monk out and have that kind of expectation, I think a better scaffolding needs to be built for a monk in 5.5e, because I mean, you know, I'll send you the PDF, Josh, after this, but like I was doing my research leading up to this whole talk, and I'm just like, best I can figure is 6th and 11th. They're just like, we're going to throw a dart and see where it lands, because there's not really consistency like what we see with, you know, ranger, paladin, cleric. We know what they're going to get. Monks is just sort of whatever.
So like I took a look at subclasses as well, and though we disagree on like what the exact kind of sub chassis or scaffolding looks like, me and Taryn, what I do think is interesting is that all the subclasses seem to assume that the monk is trying to be a striker at all levels. Which it's not. Like so we I think we made a note earlier that most subclasses in no way synergize with the stunning strike playstyle, because I think there's almost a willful ignorance from Wizards of the Coast that this is how monks are played.
The only one that I would say does synergize very, very well is going to be Astral Self. And that's because now your attacking modifier also scales with your stunning strike modifier. And that's kind of scary.
But in a way that also doesn't work, because Astral Self has no features if they have run out of key points.
Well, okay, I just there's so much about that subclass. Oh god.
I mean, I like it a lot better than the UA version. It's a lot more balanced.
Yes. Oh no, for sure. You can't bag of rats it. I mean, at least that. But you know, anyways.
But the class has problems. The class, just from a core design standpoint, both narratively and mechanically, has such deep-rooted problems that if you're trying to find a fix that will work at all levels, there's no quick fix. It has to be almost entirely redesigned. Now, if you're building a character for a one-shot, yes, there are fixes in play that you can use, but it's all context dependent, in my opinion.
Or you can just go play the Pugilist.
That's true. Yeah, that works.
All right, I'm seeing a little bit more time. Let's see, Ross, you wanted to get into some of the subclasses, and I also, guys, kind of want to pick your brain in terms of if somebody's designing for the monk for a subclass, what things should they hit as opposed to what's actually there. So first, in terms of what subclasses we have now, which ones do you guys think stand out that people should play that feeds into a potential narrative play or a play style that actually reinforces the monk's kit?
Drunken Master.
Yeah, Drunken Master is the best example. Like if you want to play like a tanky kind of like, you can play it silly, because I'm not sure if you've ever like seen the like actual drunken style kung fu. When I took kung fu for 6 years, I had a sifu who his signature style was drunken, and the guy was incredible. It's comical, but at the same time it's utterly badass when you're actually doing stuff.
Right.
I think that's a really good way. My suggestion is maybe a little bit bland, but it's also very functional, and that's open hand. And if you want to play like an outside of combat specialist, I really got to say, Way of Shadow, outside of when you're not relying on combat for your narrative, is really good.
If Way of Shadow got one change, and that the only change I'm asking, is you're able to see through magical darkness that you create.
Yeah. If you can see through your own darkness spell, that subclass becomes so good.
Oh, please. Like, just allow for that. Give it dark vision, but also you can see through the darkness that you create. I'm way happier with it at that point.
I will also say the most underrated part of Way of Shadow is that it gets the minor illusion cantrip. Because that cantrip is so good if you are a creative player.
Yeah.
If you are a creative player, that cantrip will outperform 5th level spells, I swear to God.
I keep forgetting that's a thing on that subclass. It's so like
it's the last sentence.
It's
sentence
so
of the
bizarre.
first feature, so it's so easy to miss.
Yeah. Also, I think that subclass gets pretty bizarre if you carry a blanket with you, because if that area underneath the blanket is an area of darkness, you can teleport. Like,
just carry a large parasol with you everywhere you go.
I'm kind of curious if that is interpretable to where blanket is exploitable to make that mechanic actually a problem. I don't see it so much on the monk, but I think it's hilarious if you get a Twilight Domain sorcerer that's under a blanket and they just start flying around.
Yeah, another subclass that I think actually has a kind of interesting narrative to it, even if it's not like the best mechanically. And Tara and I did discuss this a little bit, like in chat before we came on the call. Way of the Sun Soul, I think, is a very interesting attempt at a Dragon Ball Z monk.
Yeah.
But what I especially like about it is that it adds a flexibility that no other monk really has. Because those sun bolts mean that you actually can charge into the front line, do your stunning strike thing as necessary, but then when you're low on health, you can run around and consistently harass, instead of basically being useless. Like if you're too low health to like dive into the front lines and risk opportunity attacks. So it has a flexibility that no other monk subclass does. I mean, Kensei tries by giving you like longbow proficiency,
Right.
but it's not the same as Sun Soul.
I personally think with the Sun Soul, my big irk with it comes, well, sure, they should have gotten something else at 3rd level, because them just getting an alternate attack to me feels kind of like, okay, that's cool. You can throw around your key balls, sure. But I think at 6th level, it would have been nice to also get something, because you're sacrificing stunning strike synergy. It would have been cool for them to get something that still works with the Radiant Sunbolt to build off of you being a bit of a controller.
Yeah.
Like, blinded?
What's interesting is that arguably Searing Arc Strike is the best stunning strike synergy of any monk subclass.
Yeah.
Because if you get that stun off, they auto fail the Burning Hand save.
Yeah, but I don't like it, Ross. I don't like it.
You know what I do love? What makes me sad is that most monks will never see this feature because most campaigns end by 10th level. Yeah. I love the Searing Sunburst 11th level feature.
Oh yeah.
The fact that you can orbital bomb things from 150 feet away with this radiant, and like it's a 2d6 with no cost.
Yeah.
And so you can just spam this you can stay 150 feet away and you are a living trebuchet of just slamming into like the walls of your enemies, and then you can make it a fireball by expending key points.
It's supposed to be Spirit Bomb from DBZ.
Yeah,
it doesn't communicate that very well.
Well, sure. I would say, real quick though, to anybody that is looking at playing a Drunken Master and is looking for like a pretty fun fix to that, I found one this year that is beautiful, and it's allowed them to use improvised weapons as monk weapons. doesn't change anything about the power of that entire subclass, but holy hell, is it an immediate like
Oh,
flavor win.
that would be that would beautifully embrace the Jackie Chan aesthetic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good. I love it.
Yeah, I would totally allow any player to do that with Drunken Master, with Way of the Drunken Master Monk. Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of like subclasses, I would like say if you really want to dive into it, open hand monk. You guys have pretty much touched on all of them. It's like open hand monk. It's boring, it's basic, but it does what it's meant to do. There's a reason why prior to Tasha's and all these other subclasses, whenever somebody brought up the monk, that was the subclass you were generally told to pick.
Vanilla options are okay.
Yeah.
Every class needs a vanilla like it's like I was saying with whenever I designed the merchant, I was like, I need a vanilla merchant, and every reviewer has been like, well, the roving or the traveling merchant is like the most boring guild, and I'm like, it's the vanilla option. Yeah. For the dancer,
not everyone wants to add an aesthetic to an established character. It's the reason champion is the most played fighter subclass.
Yeah, it's because some people just want to hop in and play and know that like I'm not going to have a certain amount of crazy to deal with whenever I'm hopping in and piloting this thing. And that's pretty important for player buy-in whenever you're designing a class, is to have something that's very easily understood. I think probably for the accursed, what I would say like Lycan feels pretty vanilla.
I would say Misfortune is the most vanilla.
Well, okay, yeah.
Subclasses. Because it builds off of the Jinx feature instead of like trying to establish its own thing, like all the other subclasses do.
I'm going to take one more question from the chat from Wolfsbane, and then I'm going to jump into my last question regarding for those that are getting into design or homebrewing, what they can do with the monk. So the question from Wolfsbane is, if you could redesign the monk, what would it be? Would it be more of a debuffer or a striker?
Ooh.
For me, debuff. Because melee debuff is a playstyle no other class does.
No. Yeah.
And I think that's a way more interesting way to go from, like, especially if you want to embrace some martial arts aspects where there actually are entire martial arts around hitting people's like pressure points to disable their ability to attack.
Yeah.
So I think narratively that would be like one of the better fits, and mechanically it'd be more unique than anything else rather than feeling like bad rogue.
Yeah.
Like
in some ways.
For me, I think of my ideal monk would be a contrast to my dancer, where the dancer is the action economy support and that you can give other people actions and stuff. If the monk was the action economy debuffer, like what Ross is saying here, I think that would be, because it kind of wants to do that, and it seems like that's what Stunning Strike was supposed to be. It just tied it into a condition that was so detrimental that like it really couldn't be. I mean, hell, if they could have just gotten Stunning Strike as their 11th level feature, or I mean, let me go lower than that. Let me say 9th. All right, like 9th or 7th, I would still say like, holy hell, that's that good. But if it maybe could scale up at like 5th, it does. You can't get reactions, except whatever.
What if there was a feature that took one attack away from a creature every time it took its attack action?
Yeah, exactly. They're less effective at attacking.
It doesn't break it doesn't like completely cripple the creature unless it's like a creature that at early tiers only gets one attack every turn. But even then, it would still potentially have reactions. Then later it could upgrade to take away the reaction as well.
Yeah.
Like if we had a scaling version of Stunning Strike that started out semi-weak but useful and got better, like how cool would that be?
Yeah, they're the multi-attack denier kind of a class. It would make them stand out a lot more from just being the, reskin rogue that they currently are. And I just don't think that leaning into the striker playstyle is the way that Monk needs to go.
No, because we already have fighter and rogue that does that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, I agree with you guys. It gives the monk a specific play style that and a niche that no other class has currently, and that's something I really hope WotC considers. They're probably not, but I really hope
Well,
that.
we know for a fact that some designers do watch Terran's video, so maybe the fact that he's
Yep.
here will get some Wizards of the Coast eyes on this video too.
Yeah, because it just it would open up the subclasses a lot more too, and in terms of like what else I would like to see, I would like to actually see more subclasses based on actual martial arts a little bit more instead of the
Yes,
fantastic elements.
please.
Yeah,
Yes.
because like you can do a whole jujitsu or judo based monk. That's
hmm
I don't know how
Yeah.
a reaction based monk would work, but it's like I would like to see somebody that can do takedowns, misdirects that you kind of already see in the Drunken Master, but a little bit more focused on that.
Yeah.
You know.
You
Yeah.
can do that with the pugilist.
Yeah. See.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
All right.
Anyways,
Benjamin already had this discussion in his head like 5 years ago when he wrote The Pugilist.
yeah.
All right, and last question for those that are either get into serious design and trying to make some money, or just homebrewing and want to homebrew for the monk and make subclasses. What are some sort of things that you think they should at least hit? Obviously, the scaffolding is all over the place for this for the class.
I mean,
Oh,
I know that I use a particular scaffolding when I'm designing. Like I wrote 2 monk subclasses for the complete Devout Handbook, and I wrote a third for the new material appearing in the Ultimate Adventurer's Handbook that I'm working on with Benjamin Huffman and a number of other collaborators right now. So the way I do it is you get a bonus proficiency / cantrip feature and a key point based feature at 3rd level. At 6th level, I do either a defense or utility. 11th level, I do a powerful defense feature. And then getting down to 17th level, I know my hand motions mean almost nothing as my screen is too small right now. It's usually either a powerful, use a bunch of key points to do an awesome thing effect, or it is a key point costless but a less powerful but like statically useful all the time feature is generally how I design monk subclasses. What about you, Taryn?
For me, I mostly keep in mind that like what is the subclass supposed to do? I think for monk, what I can say is your subclass will, like Ross was saying with the bonus proficiencies, at early levels it's supposed to define its dynamic. Now that's pretty all over the place as to whether or not subclasses currently do that with D&D 5e, but it's nice to have something like that in there. That's just kind of true for all character options.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think the thing that I see mostly at 3rd level is you're either getting something that solidifies you as a midliner or possibly makes you a bit of a frontliner in the case of like Astral Self, possibly making you a viable backliner in the case of like Sun Soul, which I still think you want to stay in the midline with that one because 30 feet's not all that far.
Until you start orbital bombarding people.
Well, yeah.
I'm very low on health. Let's just run 150 feet away and just start.
But I think most often what happens is Monk is going to be pretty solidified as a frontliner, but the interesting subclasses get a new combat role within their 3rd level features. And that's going to be like, if you look at, 4 elements, Blaster. You look at Mercy, Healer. You look at Shadow, it's going to be something of like kind of zoner, kind of shutdown control, debuffer in a way. Actually, silence on the Shadow is something that I always forget is a thing, and it's scary good.
In combat, shuts down spellcasters.
Yeah.
Outside of combat, has incredible stealth applications.
Yeah. I will say, okay, I'll concede that Shadow is better on the merit of being a mage shutdown. I'll concede that. You still need to be able to see through your own freaking spells. But I think that your combat roles get defined specifically at 3rd level, usually at 6th and 11th level, and that's again kind of all over the place. But I think that it usually the ones that we perceive to be better tend to build off of your 3rd level center. Figure out what kind of you have your narrative, but I think that you're going to have a lot easier time designing it once you're also considering the playstyle you're supposed to evoke. It doesn't want to be a tank. Does it want to be a, blaster? What? Really keep in mind that playstyles are definitely a thing. Your rolling combat is definitely a thing. There is a meta that exists in this game, and that meta is okay. That's not damaging to D&D for us to have a meta. Yeah.
It's always a good idea to point the reader in the direction that something is supposed to play.
Yeah.
That way having a direction gives someone a concept of how their character can interact in combat without having to play 5D chess to figure out
Yeah.
how the heck am I supposed to use this thing. And it's always good to direct a player because of that.
Want to jump in really quick? Thank you, Sanctimus, for the 25. Thank you. And he said, for the love of IO, give a monk a D10 hit dice. They are in the front lines.
No.
Yeah.
No,
Okay,
I
we
would
addressed this
disagree.
earlier.
Yeah.
They're dodgy for that.
Yeah.
They especially as you scale to later levels, just they almost nothing can stick to them.
Yeah, I see that argument brought up consistently, and it's one that I even thought whenever I was playing Monk, like early in the game. Well, in my D&D career, so like 2015, 16, that I was like, I need to be in the front line. No, the whole thing with Monk, you pop in, hit the thing, back off. If you end your turn within 5 feet of a creature that is not stunned, you are not playing Monk right. Like you're that's not how.
Also,
yeah.
Another counterpoint to that argument, you know what doesn't have a D10 hit die, but still works fantastically? Pugilist. I know we keep referencing Pugilist, but that thing is a D8 hit die too, and I don't think anyone has a problem with Pugilist having a D8 hit die. Like,
Hashtag not sponsored. Just have to let everybody know.
Yeah, I know. I was
we're
about
not
to say,
sponsored.
no.
I think,
I mean,
but
I hope Benjamin watches this and sees how much we're gassing him up here.
yeah.
yeah, if you guys really just want a good bare knuckle brawler melee striker, I recommend checking out the Pugilist. And if you're wanting to play this sort of, not necessarily your martial artist, but obviously unarmed fighter, and your DM isn't allowing you to, I'd recommend showing him that it's a really,
I mean, you
really
can
well done.
flavor almost
Yeah.
any pugilist as a martial artist as well.
Yeah.
Well, and I think part of the reason why Ross and I both kind of, is because the pugilist is, even with talking with Ross, is the thing that inspired both of us to really pick up homebrew design. We saw something that was like, not just, Unearthed Arcana levels of this thing is kind of slapped together with features from other stuff. It was unique. It was extremely innovative, and it created a different play style that I think both of us opened up our eyes to, or well, I guess in my case, my eye to, to what professional homebrew could really be. And I guess it kind of inspired me more to take it, I'd say seriously. I guess just the vision of it was really unique and innovative, and it brought something new to the table that it made us think, like, what if we could do something like that?
I would not be a professional designer if I had not gone into the DM's Guild, seen the Pugilist, joined Benjamin's Patreon because I loved it so much.
Yeah.
Like, that is literally what began inspiring me to be a professional character option designer. I would not be one if not for that. I would still probably be teaching. But getting back, and this is going to feel like such a cop out. We talked a little bit about what quick fix you have for Monk.
Yeah.
Play a Pugilist.
Yeah.
That's your quick fix for Monk.
It's just everyone's gonna ask like what the quick answer is. My quick answer for what I think would make it work is just that combat meditation kind of mechanic like we were talking about earlier. But the whole class does need a redesign.
It does.
I will happily say that the entire class needs to be gutted from the ground up and whatever. I don't think it really has a problem with some people say that it goes mad because it needs dexterity, wisdom, and constitution. Well, those are 3 strong saving throws, and you're not gonna really be upset about investing into any of those at any point. I only think that something really goes multiple ability dependent once it gets like you need 4 ability scores to really make it work.
Yeah, if it's 2 plus constitution is fine. Anything beyond 3 plus constitution is too much.
Yeah, I kind of look at that as like 2.5 in a way, because everyone's gonna benefit from constitution. Single ability dependent is where it gets scary.
Yeah.
Because that's
Well,
where
that's
people.
why we can't have a Constitution caster, by the way. That's why Sorcerer does not get a Constitution spellcasting ability, because if concentration, health, and their spellcasting ability were all the same stat, they would suddenly skyrocket to being the single most overpowered thing in the entire game.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't think that there's necessarily a quick fix to be said. It does need an overhaul, and it's playable. But my opinion on it is that it's viable at best, and probably envy invoking at worst. And that you're going to feel that while you're playing it, everybody else is just getting the same stuff that you're getting, only they get to do it for free. And you got to blow your mystical universal energy in order to do it. And yeah.
So it gets back to the conversation we had very early in this talk, where I mentioned about why balance is important to me. I want to make sure that no player is outshining any other or getting outshone by another. Because the person that's getting outshone is going to have a bad experience. If you have both a monk and a rogue in a party, that monk is going to have some feel bads.
Yeah.
Because they're going to realize at second level that the rogue is just doing better than them in everything they can do.
Yeah.
And therein lies the core problem and why monk needs its own niche.
And to everybody, I think that everybody that feels a little, and this is funny to me, if you feel a little unsatisfied as a dungeon master trying to play D&D, you should try to play a support, because I think you get a lot of reward out of being a dungeon master by making other people shine. And that's exactly what the support playstyle is your job is to go in there and make everybody else feel awesome, which just by association makes you feel awesome.
I love support sorcerer so much.
Yeah.
I love it so much because twin spelling a support spell feels so good.
Yeah. So yeah, anyways.
All right. I keep saying it's the last question, but this one's going to be a last fun question, and then we're going to head off. SWAT Cat wants to know, question, what's your favorite race for monks, flavor or stat-wise?
Oh, God.
So stat-wise doesn't really apply to me anymore because I apply the +2/+1 or +1/+1/+1 to every single playable race now, because I don't feel like we should limit people in the class they can play by their race.
Yeah.
So for me, it's going to be entirely flavor. Gith Zerai is such a flavor win with Monk.
Well, I mean, the race is basically built to be a monk,
Yeah,
like that.
Exactly.
They make no ifs, ands, or buts about that. I think what's my favorite race to play a monk for. Specifically because I'm so into Journey to the West. I've got to say that the new Hadazee is already making me want to roll up like a Sun Wukong kind of a character.
I do love the Hadazee. Oh, that's such a cool. That's such a cool UA race. Oh, I loved it so much.
I think that if you're talking about which one do I think it's probably got some insane synergy with Monk. I mean, we can't overlook Tabaxi. We can't overlook. I mean,
Lizard Folk.
Yeah, Lizard Folk. I mean, Harengon is looking good because your disengagement tool, you're no longer really having to worry about step of the wind.
Yeah.
You get But
although I think Harengon's even better on non-monks because it gives the mobility of monks to non-monks.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to be playing a Harengon Barbarian in an upcoming Wild Beyond the Witchlight campaign, and I'm looking forward to being that mobile of a barbarian.
Yeah. Well, and did you see the Crawford came out and said that any movement speed increases also increase that the hop?
What?
That's yep. He has Sage Advice. Any movement speed increases also increase the distance of the hop.
Yep. So you're telling me that
Yep.
So for a monk, that could be like potentially 60 feet of hopping.
It could be it could be 100 feet of hopping.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man.
Why?
Like, it's insane.
Yeah.
Why?
So I think Harengon could be pretty.
It already gives you a bonus against opportunity attacks. Why?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that I just for all the narrative stuff, I think it would be really fun to play an Wukong monk, especially with the I say Wukong. I'm still thinking some Wukong. Hadazi, because I think that the glide has got some interesting applications in there I'd want to toy with.
Yeah, the glide is. I mean, as I told you this before, Taryn, but that came from the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica
Yeah.
Simic hybrid race. That like they basically copied and pasted the glide almost, and just added a little bit extra to it, and it's so cool. I love the glide mechanic. It fixes flight on races,
It
in my
helps.
opinion.
It definitely helps. Yeah.
Yeah, my answer for this, I like small races using the monk. It's just something like whimsical and funny. So halfling, my brother actually, we just did a one shot, and then coincidentally all of us played either a halfling or gnome. And my brother is one of these players. He doesn't care what anybody says about the monk. He's playing the monk, and he rolled up a Sun Soul monk halfling, and it was hilarious. Obviously, reflavoring everything as punching punching ankles, or knees, and stuff like that. So small races have a soft spot for me, like for monk. Who's monk? Ooh, I'm seeing everybody's chat, and then Rich say just make Sonic the Hedgehog already. Yes, you can with the Haragon.
Yeah,
pretty much what you're doing.
Actually, I'm gonna shill for a second. I have a race in the DM's Guild called the Ratter, which is literally a small like rat folk person. Play that with a monk. Give yourself blue fur. Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah.
Just saying.
All right. Okay. Looking at the time, honestly, thank you guys for coming on. We can go on forever. I think Monk is going to be just one of those things until they fix it. Nobody's going to stop talking about it. Hopefully.
Well, even when they do fix it, people are going to still talk about it.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to the big edition update in 2024. Let's see, maybe they actually do some changes, I kind of have a feeling they're going to do maybe a little bit more of a alternate options sort of thing like they've done with Tasha's, which will kind of round things out a bit. But again, thank you guys for coming on. Love to have you guys back on again.
This was so fun. I would 100% do this again. Absolutely.
I would love to have you guys on again. I know some books are coming around, and maybe if they decide to drop a UA before the end of the year, I can get you guys back on the talk shop. Okay.
Let me know. My schedule, other than most weekends, is pretty darn open. So just I'm definitely willing to make some time.
All right. Awesome. Taryn, where can they find you?
My link tree and everything, is that in the description?
Yeah, it should.
Hey.
Yes.
So my stuff's over on the Dungeon Masters Guild. I am the creator of the Merchant and the Dancer classes. I done a few collabs, including some with this guy over here. I think that is going to be right for the camera. And anywhere else online, I've got my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Indestructoboy, where I talk about a lot of, D&D, TTRPG design, and sometimes some music. I'm a music teacher by day, and I make stuff for this game at night. So yeah, that's.
And Ross, where can they find you?
So all of my stuff, all of my links. I don't have a link tree because I'm too lazy for that. But I do have 4 links down in the description, including a link to my full kind of portfolio of projects on the DM's Guild. I've created 9 full classes, 8 of which are standalone, 1 of which is as part of a collaboration. I am the co-author of the Complete Handbook series with Benjamin Huffman, and we're working on the culmination of that, the Ultimate Adventurer's Handbook, right now. We're hoping to release it in January. I also have a Patreon where I do patron exclusive designs every single month, which are suggested by and then voted on by my patrons. And then I have a Twitter where I just basically react to Arcane these days because my God, the Arcane on Netflix is good. Not sponsored.
You're the 4th person to recommend that this week to me.
You don't even have to like League of Legends because the animation and writing, voice acting, like the way they animate the faces is unbelievable.
Okay.
Just saying, check it out. Just give it a try. I was hooked after the first episode. And then I also have a Discord where I will occasionally post cheeky little spoilers about projects I'm working on that literally do not go anywhere else. And it's an intimate little community where we just talk about D&D sometimes and post memes. So feel free to join that if you'd like.
All right, awesome. Again, thank you guys for jumping in on this with me. I hope to have you guys back on again. You can always easiest way to support Dungeoneer's Pack and also Indestructoboy, like, comment, subscribe on every video. It helps the YouTube algorithm kind of just kick it out, let everybody know you're watching. And if you guys want to support any of us directly, links to all of our Patreons are in the description below. And again, thank you guys for coming up. Next week, I'm not sure what we're going to be talking about. I'll figure it out by Tuesday. You guys will see a question of the week that should give you guys a hint in the community page. Again, thank you. And until next time, you guys have a good one. You guys take care.
Later.